Hello everyone, welcome to Bees in a Pod. I'm your host Mo.
And I'm your co-host Humaira.
Today we're joined by a very special guest, Rebecca, from the Women's Environmental Network, amongst many other things also. So that I found out. Really the only thing I found out was your sewing and making stuff,
okay.
which is awesome. It's so cool. We'll dig into that a little bit, but do you want to introduce yourself? Give yourself a nice round summary of who you are?
So I'm Rebecca. I've been at Women's Environmental Network for 2 years. I work across 2 projects there, so Limbra Hub and Climate Sisters. So I love working in the community, also live in Tower Hamlets, also was born in Tower Hamlets. So I really love working with people and also very into like sustainability. And yes, I also sew a lot. I like to make things.
The sewing stuff is so cool because I wish I had the skills. I tried to start something a while ago with a friend of mine. We started like a little sustainable fashion thing called Ocean Sway.
Oh, cool.
Well, it was a really cool project. It was all about, we were trying to, he's a tailor and his dad is a tailor and he comes from the kind of Bangladeshi background of tailoring and manufacturing in the East End. So that's what I was super excited when I found out that you do so that, because it's it's a really cool kind of, especially when you tie in all the sustainability. We ended up doing one time we did a fashion show at Popular Union, and he designed a dress made out of leaves.
Oh wow!
It was really cool. Like we were literally walking around Teviot collecting leaves. One made out of leaves and another one made out of litter that we found around Teviot.
Oh wow!
So
did it smell bad?
We cleaned it.
did you though? How well did you clean it?
Ask the model who had to wear it.
Or smell them.
Yeah, people were looking a bit sideways and we were like, sustainability, because we got to like say a little piece. So I was like talking about the pieces. But yeah, that's really cool. So I guess let's dive into that first, because that's not what you do in your full-time work.
No.
And I think before we talk about full-time work, let's talk about passions,
cool.
Which seems to be your passion, right?
Yeah. Like I think definitely at this point it would be like, my mastermind subject, sewing, even though like I was never trained. Like the last sewing classes that I probably took was like when I was in year 8 at school. So it was a lot of like just reading books and like, because I started when I was 15, I think. I just decided I'm going to start sewing things. And then I went straight in with making a pair of trousers, which is not the easiest thing to make, but somehow managed to do it because, I was just like a teenager and just had like lots of enthusiasm. So I kind of started sewing my bits like around then and kind of fell out of it a little bit and then got back into it a bit at uni, and I did sculpture at uni, and then I ended up, because I realized I really like sewing, I ended up doing like a lot of like textile kind of work and got me back into sewing my own clothes. And then I think probably like lockdown, I guess, was like when I went, okay, actually I'm gonna do this quite a bit. And then I set up my Instagram account, and then that just kind of like took off. Like I don't really know like what I've got no training. I don't know. It just does quite well.
You're doing a good job. You're doing a great job.
I just take photos of myself standing in my living room looking miserable. But no, I love sewing clothes. I love thinking about like where materials are come from and things. And I think because I used to work in I worked in like a vintage shop when I was 8, how old was I? 20 maybe, for like quite a few years. And it kind of really made me think about like where clothes come from, where textiles come from, where clothes end up. So I think that's always been something that I've been really interested in. And then learning as well about like conditions, how people work, how the clothes are produced, what it's like for the farmers. Like it just really like, really spurred me on to be like, it's really important that we think about where our clothes are coming from, and, making them is one way that we can have a bit more control over that. Buying like secondhand is another way. But yeah, so I think that's what kind of makes me continue to sew. And also,
is that what things. Is that where your kind of passion, I guess, for sustainability and the environment, did it come from there?
Yeah, I think definitely. Like it was that was definitely like kind of the thing that got me into it. Because then like I had my son, so I've got a little boy who's like 8, and when I had him, then I started to think about like, oh, you know, where did the nappies come from, and I'd like to make sure that they're not getting thrown in the bin and stuff like that. And so then I probably got like a little bit more into like low waste living-y type stuff. But yeah, it definitely all stemmed from like clothing and fashion, and just trying to do things in a bit more of a environmentally friendly way.
That's awesome. So I guess then let's talk a little bit about your role at When, because you're in Limburg Hub. That used to be our old home.
You'll get your place sometimes.
Honestly, we got so many memories there. That's where me and Humaira first kind of got involved with
really
LIC as teenagers. We were like little kids. How's it going over there? What kind of stuff do you do over there?
It's going really well. So we work with very much like with the local community, because as you know, like it's at the bottom of like flats. So we've got like loads of people around us, and then it's all kind of all the flats are centered around a garden. So there's an amazing garden that's there. So the project that we're on is part of the bigger Just Fact project, which is Just Food and Climate Transition, which is based in Tower Hamlets, which is another When project. And we're looking at like food justice and ways that we can kind of create different food systems within Tower Hamlets, and then kind of go outside of Tower Hamlets and say, look, these are the things that we've been doing. This is what we think could work for other places. And at Limburg, it's very much, we call it like a grow, cook and eat project. So we do lots of growing, lots of cooking, but also lots of eating.
Nice.
Which is great because I love food. So it's really, so lots of gardening, which is amazing. Love gardening. And then cooking. I'm not so good at cooking, but you know, like you have to cook in order to eat. So like I understand that it's important. It's just like really lovely. We've got a really lovely community, a really nice like kind of like close group at the moment. We're looking at doing more outreach and things to get more people involved, because still there's like a lot of people who are just like, what on earth is that building? Like, what are you doing in there?
It's hard to convey what's going on in there. It's, from the outside it just looks like a flat.
Exactly.
It's not until you go inside like, oh, there's stuff going on here. There's a huge kitchen, a huge garden. The garden's beautiful.
It really is.
A great garden space. So what's it like working at When, and why did you decide I understand you get interviewed and all of that, but why did you decide to work there?
So actually my friend Linda was working at When, so she'd started before I did, and because I kind of like had these kind of like interests, there was a job that came up and she was like, oh, I think you'd be really good at it. And of course I was like, no, of course I wouldn't. What are you talking about? That'd be horrendous. Of course I'd be terrible at it. But she persuaded me to apply for the job, and then like I managed to get the job, which is really great. And I think because before that I used to actually work with young people. So I used to work at a college doing kind of like, we did like a lot of horticulture. So I kind of had that kind of like growing background. It's called Harrington Scheme. It's very nice. So all the young people I worked with had learning differences and like disabilities, and just absolutely loved it. And I was doing that up until last summer, but then I started working at Climate Sisters, so then I transitioned into full-time When. But yeah, I think really being at When, it's just like I feel like I've developed so much being there, like being around other people who are like so strong in their convictions, and like it's really kind of like spurred me on to be like more radical and kind of these things that I already had like a bit of interest in, like social justice and things. It's really just giving me like more words for those sorts of things, and like it's kind of like always like an education, as well as because the projects that I work on are very much like locally based. It's given me so much more involvement in my local community, and like it just feels like a lot of like richness has come out of it, I guess. Because
we've been to a couple of conferences and events by When, and one of the things I really enjoyed was how philosophically driven things are, and everybody having that kind of philosophical base around the things that you guys are doing. And the fact that you could, you could talk to most people and they can communicate that to you. I found awesome, because I studied politics in university,
cool.
so I'm super interested in these sort of things, and it's a really interesting insight, because you're taking all these kind of political theories and you're like, oh, actually, look, here's it in action, which is awesome to see. So you mentioned Climate Sisters. That's something that we run here. So one of our groups, the Teviot Sisters, I think, were they part of the first cohort?
Yeah, they were the first one in London.
Yeah, it was really exciting, because I've heard really good things about it. Humaira, you'll know a bit more about that than I would, because you've been working with the group a lot closer.
Yeah, so I guess Rebecca can also touch on it, but Climate Sisters program, I believe it's the first in London, right?
Yeah.
At the Teviot. So essentially, Roshini and Rebecca, is it about a 12-week course?
Yeah.
That we had the Teviot, and teaching them all about climate. And a lot of these women that I think almost all of them were like, they have no idea what climate is about. And the whole topic was a sort of taboo topic for them. They joined, and then throughout the course, they've learned so much. And then now some of them are on phase 2 as well. Yeah. And it was such a growing learning curve for the ladies. And do you want to tell us a bit more about the program?
So I think, because with Climate Sisters, we always say, we tried to run it as a space where it's not like we're the teachers and you're the students and we're going to impart all this information. It's really like this idea of that everyone has knowledge, and it's just drawing it out in those spaces and allowing people to voice their opinions and question things and be like, well, I think this, and just really giving that space for people to do that, which for some reason is a luxury, because people just don't have the time. But I think with the LIC group, it was they, so many people know all of these things about climate change and know that, oh, it's hotter now in the summer and it's difficult to my tomatoes haven't grown so well, and it's oh yeah, that's a sign of it. And there was also this kind of link to because all of the group were Bangladeshi, and it's oh, I know that there's lots of flooding back home in Bangladesh, and now I have the words to say it is climate change, and that's why it is. And so it's not as if we've had to be you don't know anything, and we're going to tell everyone knows these things. It's just being able to have the words to do it, and that kind of confidence to be my opinion matters, and I can talk about these things, and because they're issues that affect us all, but it's that thing of not having the time to actually think about it, or to speak about it, or to kind of talk to other people about it. And it's just giving that space for people to have that.
Language is so empowering. And I love the way that you've structured the sessions, because one of the things I've always complained about is this whole factory model of education that we all follow, very top heavy. And weirdly enough, for my dissertation, I was I was comparing our model of education to how it was in Catalonia when they were under anarchy, when they had no government, and they were under completely different kind of. And it took me ages, but I managed to find some sources about how schools were run then, and it was exactly how you were saying. It was very much conversational, so it's ask questions and kind of dig into things, and it was all rather than it coming from a position of authority, because people just don't respond, especially children, most people don't respond well to harsh authority. There should be a level of mutual respect. I really appreciate that, because I sound and clearly it's effective, right? Because the fact that these women are able to engage in these conversations and like you said, actually be able to express themselves is awesome. And I'm sure there was some cool things where they were able to see that some practices that we do back home, potting plants in old yogurt pots. Things like that is okay, you're being sustainable.
Exactly.
Repairing your clothes, you're being sustainable already. And I can imagine it's empowering.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like those things that are kind of like co-opted by the West to be like, oh, look, we're like zero waste and we're like, you know, so sustainable. And it's like, these are things that people have been doing for centuries. And like, just reusing what you have. Like, that's just what you naturally do. Like, it's like gentrifying. Like just traditional practice. Yes.
Like, you know, storing food in a biscuit tin. Or storing needles.
The sewing bits.
The sewing actually has biscuits in a tin.
Yeah, no, curry and the ice cream.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So have kind of taken it back to some of your sewing and making stuff, has your kind of cultural identity and cultural background had any influence into how you've kind of gone about it and how you've kind of grown and developed that skill?
I think like because my grandma was a big sewer and my aunt still is, and my mum, I'll give her a shout out as well. She doesn't say much, but yeah. So I think because being that kind of like my grandma and my grandpa came over from Jamaica and being that kind of like first generation to migrate, there was very much like that kind of resourcefulness, and like my grandma would like go to the department store and just like look through all the clothes and then she'd just go home and like recreate it.
That's so
cool.
That
kind of like, just like, okay, let me see what they're doing. Okay, I can do that.
Practical piracy.
Yeah. yes.
I love it. I'm here for it.
Oh gosh. Yeah, so I think there's like a part of it came from that, because I think like, you know, if my mum hadn't had a sewing machine and like didn't know how to sew and I didn't think that making your own clothes was a thing, I probably wouldn't have like seen it as an option. But because I'd kind of like grown up around it, I was like, oh yeah, I can make my own clothes. Like I can see something in a magazine and be like, oh okay, I'll give it a go. So yeah, I think it definitely does come from like family, and like that's see, you know, like sometimes you have to see something to be able to dream that you can do it.
Does your passion kind of go anywhere beyond, like does it nourish you beyond the kind of physical art that you create? Is there anything kind of deeper in it for you?
Yeah, I think very much so. Like I find it it's because I can be like quite scatterbrained, I guess. You say that still? Don't know. But like, like I can be, my thoughts can be quite busy. And I find like sewing is definitely something that like calms me, and it's like something nice to focus on. And you can kind of see that progression. Like I'm quite good at following something through to the end. So it gives you kind of like that sense of achievement. And just like, I do really think like it's quite magic to like make something, you know, to take a piece of cloth, which is essentially like 2D, and you just make it into like something that like fits a 3D body. Like it's really cool.
Community, a passion for this.
No, it's really fun. And I think also there's like a lot of I'm very slow at sewing because I procrastinate about everything. But like I kind of like that about it as well. Like I really like I'm really quite like to do like measurements and like check, oh no, is this going to be fun? You know, like I quite like the whole process of it, and I like taking my time on it, and it's like allowing myself that to take my time, and it's not a stressful thing because it's not something that I'm trying to like sell or make money from. Like, you know, it's something that's just for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Amara, do you want to pick a question?
Yeah. So how can we encourage more people of color to think and be more sustainable?
I think because, you know, like we said about you know, like the curry and the ice cream tub, like I think there's so many things that people already do that are sustainable, that are like culturally passed down. So I don't even think it's necessarily that people are not being sustainable. It's just that maybe it's not in the ways that society kind of like says is being sustainable,
popularized.
Exactly. So, and just because
that's interesting,
just because someone's like isn't buying organic food doesn't mean that, you know, they're not cooking meals from scratch every day, you know. And it's like all these, it's like, where do you kind of what's the words, something like, you know, there's value in lots of different ways of being sustainable. And so I think it's not even necessarily that you have to kind of like validate someone's sustainability, because I feel like a lot of people do these things anyway. It's more just maybe linking it to, you know, these practices are environmentally friendly, and the things that you're already, like a lot of the things you're already doing are good for the planet. And this is why it's important to continue to do those things. But I think there's also an element of like kind of decolonizing the whole thing as well, because like in Climate Sisters, we've talked a lot about, people would be like, oh, well, you know, like back home in Thailand, we always use banana leaves to wrap food. But now like people use plastic more. And it's like, why is that? It's because like the West has come over and gone, plastic is good. It's great. It's new. It's like fashionable. It's, you know, the future. And now when we see the destruction of these things years on, it's like, oh no, actually the old way was the better way. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. Particularly with kind of decolonizing the way that we kind of think about these things and our practices. Like I've got a bit of a brain block. But yeah, so on with Climate Sisters, I think it would be interesting to maybe dig into a little bit of that, in terms of what happens in the sessions. So if you can take us through kind of session by session.
Yeah. So Climate Sisters is made up of like 2 phases. So the first phase is like 12 weeks. And the groups are about, I think we take about 12 women usually. And the focus is on really kind of reaching out to groups who wouldn't usually be represented in like climate conversations. So we're working like with community groups, marginalized women, and people from like minority backgrounds, and really trying to get these voices more like heard more. And I think part of that is not even, you know, like, because we don't see it as like people don't have opinions, or like, you know, they don't have the knowledge. It's like they do. It's just giving people that space to have to like, you know, to be like, oh no, I do have an opinion on this, and I can speak about this. So through the course, through the 12 weeks, there's like confidence building, kind of there's a bit of like kind of getting to know yourself as well, because I think also as women, it can be quite common to just be like, you know, to kind of be this carer and to kind of like be quite selfless and kind of to put other people before yourself. And I think part of the course is really kind of bringing people back to themselves and be like, what do I want? What are my ambitions? You know, what have I got to say? And just making sure that people feel, just more confident to kind of like speak up and to be themselves, and to realize that what they say has as much power as like, you know, what climate scientists might say or whatever.
Have there been any like interesting or inspiring kind of developments with some of the participants?
Yeah, definitely, like loads. Yeah, no, it's been so like we do a session where it's like about projecting your voice, and in one of our sessions, one of the women went up, and because we have translators, like one of the translators was like I would never have thought she would ever do anything like, you know, to put herself at the front. And it was like, so yeah, things like that where you can like clearly see that someone's really gained confidence in doing things. And then also because we see it as really important that people are like reimbursed for their time. So we've had people who this has been the first time where they've it's kind of like warranted them having a bank account. So like just that, like, you know, that step towards being, but you know, just kind of like that development is like really cool, because like
that's so inspirational.
Yeah,
I know one of the women we've been working with for a while, Aaliyah, right? She's incredible.
She's amazing.
Yeah,
she is one of the most inspirational people I've ever met. And from when we moved into the Tevye Center up until now, she's just been on a constant growth.
Yeah.
And then to see her, is she one of the translators, right?
Yeah.
To see and for her to kind of move to a paid position is so inspiring. And it's a testament to the work that kind of goes on here in community work and how it can really empower and uplift people. Yeah, I've always admired the whole paying people for their time, because that's the value we impart on our young people. So it's always, if our young people are taking part in anything, their time is valuable. And more so than that, like we're here to address systemic issues. And a root of all of these issues is money, really.
Yeah.
It's being able, it's kind of trying to mitigate these barriers, and oftentimes those barriers are financial.
Yeah.
And I've always found that really interesting. And have you seen any kind of real life impact on paying these women for their time in terms of their contribution to your sessions and them kind of, and their development, I guess? 'Cause beyond the kind of obvious, has there been any actual examples where somebody's mentioned anything like that to you?
I think, yeah, there's definitely been like, you know, some of the women have been like, this is the first time like I've ever been paid, or like, you know, ever had any sort of income. And yeah, like having an income is like empowering, because it gives you choices, right? Like, so I think for some women it's really, again, that's like something that's kind of like helped their confidence to grow and to be like, oh, okay, this is something that I could do. But also like kind of not necessarily on the flip side, but like another kind of outcome has been that some of the women have kind of thought that, you know, like others might be just joining in for the money. But we've always said like, if that's the motivation, that's absolutely fine. Yeah. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with being like, I'm just here because I want to get paid, because it's still like beneficial for people to be there. And always by the end of the courses, people always like, I've really enjoyed it. Like, I'd love it to be longer. Like, of course, everyone gets something out of it. And it's even just being like the kind of like friendship that you make in the space. Like there's always going to be something valuable that you get out of it that is more than just the money as well.
I've heard the same thing from our young people. Like oftentimes when I do the testimonials, they're like, at first I just joined for the bursary, for the money. You know what, I really gained a lot from this. And it's so cool to see, and that's really interesting to hear that some of the women never had a bank account before. Like, this is the first opportunity for them to have a reason to open a bank account. And definitely that kind of element is I know from my mom, she wasn't I think she stopped working when I was born, and then she got back into working here at the center running the cafe in 2020. And the change that I saw in her was dramatic. And she even like now that she's kind of settled into work, it's she's been open about it, particularly around her mental health and her well-being. And it's amazing to see these opportunities kind of spread out, and then tying it kind of into, like you said, giving them the words and knowledge to be able to explain why they're being sustainable. And hopefully this leads to like they'll keep kind of working in this field, right? That's the hope. It will encourage you to work here.
And also like part of the phase 2, so phase 2 kind of the women are given like a budget, and then they are they work towards some sort of like expressive creative output that is to do with what they're interested about in climate change. I've completely lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Take your time. This isn't a live podcast, so we're good. We're good.
What were we saying about money? No,
we were talking about
I'm forgetting that.
The impact. It's we were talking about how these. I was talking about my mom feeling empowered from getting to work, and these women potentially going on to work in this area.
Yes, that was it. Yeah. So I think definitely, I would hope that people feel like, you know, like they can kind of apply for those sorts of things, and realize that they have something to contribute. And I think that there's actually one of our women also said like, oh, now I would like to get a job and like, you know, I want to go into paid work. And she's like, you know, in her 60s, and that's so cool. Like,
right?
That is so cool.
That's
so
amazing.
Cool. Yeah. Because I think there's, the way that like, that maybe you've like lived your life is like, you think that that's the only way it can be. And it sometimes takes for someone else to come in and be like, oh, well, there's also like these things. And like, have you thought of this? Or like, you know, to even for people to get like the bus to somewhere where they haven't been before, or like, you know, it's just really opening up the possibilities for people.
Yeah, like you took the Tevye sisters to a trip to the beach, right? And that was the first time they've been to the beach.
I was so shocked. About just under half of the group, and we took 50 women, by the way. So that's like 25 women have never ever been to the beach or never had the chance to. And that's just so amazing.
Yeah, it's really kind of opening up different opportunities for self-development and growth. And to talk about kind of integration into the community, particularly the women around here, because I've spoken with some of the women who've lived here for a while, and the kind of they've not been allowed like to talk. I find it really ironic that some of the kind of racist people that we have living in the UK who keep talking about, oh, they're not integrating, all of that, are the ones creating an environment in which people feel uncomfortable to integrate. Yeah. And also when they say integration, really they want to use the word assimilation. Yes. Which is not the difference. You know what I mean? They don't want to take in that culture. And I think it was really, really, really cool to see all of this happening in Tevye, particularly specific to Tevye as well, because this community has been, it was a historically quite a racist area. And I've heard that from some of the women who still live here, you know, getting their doors kicked in, having dog mess left at their door, put through their all sorts of disgusting things happening to them. And to see them now kind of being able to participate in the same things that everyone else can, and to integrate, to bring some of their culture, their knowledge into things, and to be able to share these things are amazing. Yeah, I think that the gardening projects, like quite the one with our urban, is a really cool example, because you got all kinds of people, and everybody's like growing things, and people like we had a resident. An English resident who I was really surprised to hear, like, oh yeah, you know, I've been eating lots of nugget chili now.
Oh yeah.
That completely, I was not expecting that, and it was really cool to hear. And
she grows it herself as well.
Yeah, she grows it.
She grows it. Yeah, I was so shocked.
Which is amazing. It's amazing because that's integration, right? Yeah. Because I'm sure, and you know, the kind of non-English people also got to kind of hear from the English people, impart some of their kind of their values and their traditions, and it's an exchange, and I think it's really amazing to see. And these kind of projects definitely do a huge part in freeing people to that conversation.
Yeah, I think like there's it's that idea of it not being like extractive, or not being like, we're going to show you the way it needs to be. Yeah, it is that exchange, and like that's kind of the way that we build societies and like all get along. Is like that we recognize that we do have differences, but we celebrate the differences.
That's it.
And there's also like we had a trip to Barbican to the exhibition that was on there with the women, and you know, like so many of the women had not been, you know, to anywhere that was like that at all before, not been to like art galleries, and I think there's part of it that's like kind of like claiming those spaces as being like places that you can go and be like, you shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable here, like you can ask for a prayer space, you can come, and like this is a place that you can go and you are welcome and you belong as much as anyone else. And just really like taking up that space especially as a group, because hopefully that will give people more confidence to like do things more by themselves as well. But yeah, that's kind of also been like something that's really important, because London is for everyone. Like, you know, you shouldn't feel like you can't go to a free gallery or whatever. Yeah.
It's inspirational even for, because the way I'm seeing it is I really want people to kind of to hear about these stories, because especially for people of color who are born here, right? If people who are not born here, English is not their first language, are able to kind of, like you said, claim back these spaces and take action and really get integrated and really try and overcome some of these systemic issues. You who have the kind of privilege of being educated here and to speak the language natively and to be born into the culture and to really have that kind of leg up, it should definitely be a source of inspiration to try and overcome some of these systemic issues that we are now dealing with, albeit nowhere near the scale of some of these women and men who came to this country in like the 70s. I mean, especially around Tower Hamlets, like every corner you go to, every borough, there's a memorial or something around, you know, somebody who died as a result of racial attacks. So it's amazing to see. So what's been, I mean, maybe you've already answered this through Tevye Sisters, but is there another kind of favorite thing that you've done or worked on or seen or collaborated on while you've been at WEN?
I think one of my favorite things is at Limba we have because we have like quite a core group, we often have celebrations and obviously they involve food because we like to eat, but yeah, just some of the parties that we've had there have been like just so lovely. We usually like have Eid parties and then we have like a harvest celebration, then we always have like a winter party, and like one of them we had like a Bollywood dancer come, and then so like everyone's dancing and it's just like a real like safe space. Like I hate, you know, like such a cheesy thing to say, but like it really is a safe space like for the women that we work with there, for everyone to kind of like be themselves and like have a good chat and express their views, and just to be able to see that and to be able to be like part of that is just like so special and like so heartwarming, and also belly warming because the food is absolutely delicious.
I've had some of your food. You know what? You guys really changed me around to vegan and vegetarian food. I was so close-minded before. Have you ever been to their event and tried their food?
No, but you've mentioned it in the last.
I've spoken about this
multiple times.
Honestly, every time I go to one of your events, it inspires me to be like, oh, you know what? Vegetarianism, not bad. We can make it work. We can make it work. It's amazing.
I mean, that's another thing though as well. Like culturally, you know, you think, oh no, like I couldn't possibly be a vegetarian, but then like maybe if you think of like the dishes that you eat, actually maybe it's only like the one main dish that's meat, and then like the rest of it is actually vegetarian. So
most people back home, the only time you'd have meat is Eid. And you know what I mean, special occasions. Weddings. So most of the time, especially in Bangladesh, you guys are mainly fish and vegetables, right?
The main dish of the Bangladesh is all fish curries and vegetable curries. Now obviously everything's been different now.
Because we have access to wealth and we have access to instant, relatively cheap meat. Likewise, I'm Moroccan, and most of our food is actually vegetarian. There's some meat that's been incorporated into it, but really staples are it's all veggie. It's all veggie. On Fridays we eat couscous every Friday. And it's
is that a thing?
Yeah, every Friday. It's a thing in Morocco.
Oh, that's so cool.
Every single Friday. I mean, it's harder to do it living out here, but when we were younger, when we go to Morocco for 6 weeks, every single Friday, without fail, be couscous, and it's mainly a bunch of vegetables. There's usually a little bit of meat. But really the vegetables are the star. But it's interesting how as a, you know, if we move away from our kind of roots and we indulge a little bit more in things we don't necessarily need to, and really it's not good for you. You know, especially we eat a lot of red meat. Red meat is not good for you. So this is a random one then. So what question do you wish people would ask you? Like, you know those times where you really want to talk about something and you're just waiting for something like, I wish somebody would ask me that. What is that question for you?
I don't think I've ever thought of that.
Really?
I don't know.
I can rephrase it in a different way. Maybe that will help. We asked one of our guests. We've done 3 podcasts today.
Oh wow!
Well,
congratulations.
This is our 3rd. Thank you. But I'll rephrase it a little bit. So this is one I asked Marissa.
Okay.
So if you imagine you go home after this podcast and you're by yourself in your room, and then all of a sudden a portal opens up, and out of that portal comes you as a teenager.
Oh, nice.
What do you want that teenager to ask you that would help that teenager?
I think definitely it's like what matters, like what should I be focusing on, what should I not? And I think, because I think definitely as a teenager, I was like, well, classic teenager, like, everything is like so like, it's such a big deal, and you think that like this is the end of the world and this is the end of the world, and so I think it's like giving that kind of like wider perspective, which is often quite difficult to have. And I think through my life, like I've kind of like had things happen where it kind of does make you shift, and you go, oh, actually, do you know what matters? It's like, whether this person likes me or doesn't like me, that's fine. Like, not everyone's gonna like you, and just really realizing kind of like the things to let go, because they don't help you through life. Like, there are some things like holding the MPs to account, like things like that. Those things do matter, but there's other things that like you can expend so much of your energy on something, and it's like, this is not serving me, this is not like helping me to like better the world. Like, just let it go. Yeah.
Were you ever, when did you start becoming kind of politically or socially kind of conscious? Was that you were you that teenager, or did you become that as an adult?
Yeah, no, I was definitely not that teenager. I think so. Yeah, someone asked me this, like something similar to this yesterday, and I was like, ooh. So I think what it was I in like 2013, I got really ill and I was off work for ages, and I think it just really made me like look at the world like a bit differently. And after that, I just had like this big like thing against injustice, and I was like, no, but things need to be fair, and like, and I will not be quiet. And I remember like I got back to work, and then like, I was that person who was like, well, why aren't they being paid enough, and why is this happening, and and I think it should be like this, and just being like, really more vocal about stuff, because I think I always did have opinions, but I think it made me just a bit more like set in them and stuff. And I think from then, because that was just like me and like a few colleagues, like, I didn't know anything about like unions or anything. I just was like I was just stumbling through and like writing letters to my bosses and stuff. And I think from that experience, then I've always kind of, then I've had like this interest in, I guess like social justice essentially. But I just, again, like I didn't know the words, like I didn't know that you could like join a workers union or like what they really were, and I didn't really understand. And it's it just feels like something that's kind of growing like constantly, and I think starting work at WEN as well has like really accelerated that and just made me really passionate about social justice, I guess, and making sure that we are working towards something that, like a world where there is equality and things are equitable, and no one is left behind and everyone can feel included. And I think also like working in with people with like learning differences and like disabilities is also like seeing it from that angle as well, and being like, we really need, like it's not people that are broken and like can't do things, it's like the systems and like the society, like we need to be more inclusive as a society, and we need to make sure that people do have opportunities to do what they would like to do, and that we're not leaving people behind, and that where you're born is not gonna I mean, you know, this is like big dream, but
yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I completely relate. I completely relate with that, because when I first joined LIC, really it was mainly just, I was 14 years old and it was just music stuff. So I was an angry teenager, angry at school, angry at how the systems were set up. But like you said, I didn't have the words or the kind of context to really understand why am I angry. I couldn't express myself. And when I went to college, and I had my teacher definitely biased me in terms of my thinking initially, because he was super left wing. Like, he was probably that far away from being a communist or an anarchist. He was very, very, very left leaning. But it was a really interesting insight for me, because he was like trying to explain the words for things. So he was like, okay, look, you have to understand, like, this is, this is how the base of the world is based off of money and profit. Really, profit is the main. Once I understood that concept, it's like, okay, so the aim for most the kind of big, the aim for pretty much the whole world is like, okay, let's make that profit, right? Let's make a surplus. Where does that come from? Surplus cannot be achieved without a level of exploitation, right? Yeah. Because you cannot achieve a profit on something unless you produce more than you pay.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, okay, that's interesting. And then LIC really helped me with that through taking us to protests. So my first protest was with LIC, and it was a student protest. I can't remember what it was about now, but it was a student. I think way back in the LIC video, LIC page, I think there's a photo. I was taking a selfie at one of the marches.
Left to go back.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. It's deep in there.
So cool.
But it's definitely, and I'm really glad to kind of see that. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to stay here as well. It's to try and do my bit to make sure that other young people can also access that same level of understanding and become politically and socially active. And it's so cool to see that still. Yeah, it really is empowering.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's like one of those things, like when you, again, like, these things, and like how you're being affected in the world, but you don't always know why, or you don't have that kind of like view, that bigger view of like, oh, okay, the whole world is like, the society that I live in is like a setup for me to fail. Oh, okay,
makes sense now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So let's wrap it up there. I think we've spoken for about 50 minutes now.
Oh, wow.
Time flies. Do you have any parting advice or words or anything you'd like to promote? This, for context, is probably going to go out some point during March.
Okay, let me think. Let me just make sure I've got my WEN hat on. What have you got coming up?
Take your time. Like I said, this is not live.
I don't know. I can't think of any, like, because we've got like these events this week, but so I can't think of what's in the future. But maybe I'll just be like, check out the WEN website. Or,
just generally anything you want to promote. Yeah, go for it. And if you send me anything, I'll pop it in the description and everything. But yeah, go anything you want to promote. If you just want to keep it to advice, share a bit of advice or some final words.
Cool. Yeah, I think definitely check out like the WEN website. Look at some of our projects that are going on. If anyone would like to host a Climate Sisters group, do get in touch with WEN. It is great fun. It's lots of fun to be on, so please get in touch. And I think advice wise is just like, I think just question things, like always question things, and never think that like you're not good enough to speak up, or you don't know enough. Like, feel free to like share your opinions, and the only way that we can learn is by like speaking out and learning from each other, and then someone will be like, oh, well, I've seen this thing, why don't you read this? Or whatever it is. Like, I think, really don't isolate yourself, don't think that what you think is wrong or whatever. Just really get out there, make sure you talk to people, get educated that way, and fight for what's right.
I like that. Great words to end on. So thank you for listening to Bees in a Pod. I've been your host, Mo.
And I've been your co-host, Humaira.
And make sure you like, follow, share, and follow Rebecca on all of her stuff.
Yes.
Those follow accounts going up. All resources will be in the description, or check out Instagram, link in bio, all of that good stuff. Thank you.
Cool.